Hey everybody, welcome back. Mike Brown here with Remax in Toronto. Today is Wednesday, September the 17th, and the Bank of Canada is just about to make a policy rate announcement where most people are anticipating the rate's going to come down from 2.75 to 2.5%. Now, if I'm wrong about that, there will be a correction inserted in the video right here.
Nailed it.
Is this going to signal a turnaround for the real estate market? Well, if you remember back in June of 2024, when the Bank of Canada made its first interest rate reduction from 5% to 4.75%, a lot of people anticipated it was going to bring a bunch of buyers into the market, when in fact what it really did is it increased the listing inventory because sellers thought the buyers would follow, and they really didn't.
Really?
And I think it's really put us in firm buyer's market territory for well over a year now. Although some institutions are kind of conveying information to the contrary.
What you talking about, was?
You see, the Canadian Real Estate Association just announced that we had a record August. Yes, the best August for sales in the past 4 years. Wow. The past 4 years.
That's incredible.
Bear in mind, it's the Canadian Real Estate Association, so that's coast to coast. And in actual fact, we only exceeded the previous highest August in the last 4 years by only 50 sales. 50 sales nationally more than the second highest sales in August over the last 4 years. Doesn't seem like much to brag about, so it kind of makes you wonder, why is this headline so predominant? What information are they actually trying to convey here? Well, I think it's important to know two things. Number one, real estate, construction, renovation, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, all the people who are associated with real estate building transactions forms a substantial amount of the gross domestic product for our country. So I think there's a vested interest in keeping the market alive or propping it up a little bit, whether it's the government or the Canadian Real Estate Association or the Ontario Real Estate Association or the Toronto Real Estate Board or even RECO, the Real Estate Council of Ontario, but really not so much if you've been reading the headlines about them lately.
We're moving on from that.
So there is a vested interest in trying to convey some positivity to the market. But it's so important to understand the difference between the macro market, meaning the entire country, and the micro market, meaning the neighborhood that you live in, that you're thinking of buying into or you're thinking of selling out of. And that's why it's so very important to dig underneath these headlines. You know, if you follow me on this channel, I'm not a doomsayer and I'm not a FOMO expert. I don't believe that the bottom's falling out of the market. I don't believe that you need to get into the market today because real estate prices are going to start to skyrocket again. I believe that this is a market that's dominated by people who want a roof over their head and a house to call home. And I think you also know that the majority of investors, maybe all of them, at least the small-time investors, aren't participating in the market anymore. They're the ones who drove the market up. But more specifically, the ratio of listings that are available compared to the sales that are taking place, for me, have always given me the best insight on how the market's tracking and how I can best help my clients, be them buyers or sellers, navigate this market. And the Canadian Real Estate Association is currently saying to people that about 1 out of every 2 houses is selling, when in actual fact, in the busiest markets or the most populated markets in the country, Vancouver and Southwestern Ontario, those numbers are nowhere near 50%.
Truth is not always a pleasant thing.
If you track my channel's information, if you go to my website, RE Inventory TO, you'll see there's an ad libs column, and I track the data every 4 weeks, so every 4-week period, and the change between July and August was basically nil. We saw slightly elevated sales, but I don't think it was really represented by pricing. And it's more in Toronto, like 1 in 3 are selling, and condos more like 1.5 in 10. In Vancouver, I'm not really sure, but I'm sure it's a similar story. So sure, there's probably markets that are doing better than others. I hear Montreal is doing quite well. Calgary is starting to slow, but saw a boom later than Toronto and Vancouver. So it's not the same picture in every region of the country. And these are the two biggest markets, Vancouver and Toronto. So this is really where sort of the pulse of the market is being felt. Now, again, getting back to those numbers that CREA is talking about, it's important to remember that CREA makes its money from licensed realtors. And the numbers are a very important part of why we see these headlines and why it's so important to dig down a little bit deeper. When we come back from the break, I'm going to share some of those numbers and why I believe these sort of positive reinforcement headlines become so prevalent in a market that's so hard to really predict. But we're at that point again. So without further delay, let's get a look at that inventory story.
Mr. Data, download the inventory.
So yes, numbers are important. We all know that I'm a numbers guy.
Are you a nerd?
We follow the ad libs here. We follow the listing inventory numbers on a bi-weekly basis. But what are the numbers for agents and membership that may be the driving force behind these suspicious headlines? Well, I did a story, or I had an episode last year, I think it was before the summer, kind of referencing everything old is new again. And it was a CBC report from the 90s that was talking about the growth in population here in our city and how it was affecting the residents, real estate prices, what have you. And it referenced that back in the 90s, when I was an agent as well.
It's a long time ago.
The membership for the Toronto Real Estate Board was hovering around 16,000 agents. But at the time, with 16,000 agents, it was still the largest organized real estate board on the planet.
It really is quite incredible.
Yeah, that's right. We had more agents here in Toronto in the 1990s than in any other organized real estate board across the globe. And I guess for the most part, we're talking North America because trade of real estate in Europe is so much different. Maybe Australia is similar. I don't really know. But basically, we had more agents here in the 90s than any other board on the entire planet. And that story has remained very much similar, just elevated. The Canadian Real Estate Association reports that there are approximately 160,000 realtors from coast to coast. And of the 160,000, approximately 80,000 of those agents are registered with the Greater Toronto Real Estate Board. 80,000 of them. And of the 80,000, 40,000 agents are currently practicing real estate sales here in the 416. So that's a lot of realtors who, as you can pretty much suspect, are working really hard just to survive right now with a decreased volume of sales. And that's an important thing to understand as to why we see these headlines. Well, there's a pretty simple reason for that, and it's the change in the real estate brokerage business that took place back in the 90s, maybe even the late 80s. And that's another number that I'll talk about in future episodes. And what is that number? Well, it's the number difference between 50-50 versus 95-5.
Cryptic. Cryptic is good.
And if you're a realtor practicing real estate and you're watching this channel, you know what I'm talking about. But for now, it's the end of this episode. And until the next episode, this is Mike Brown with RE/MAX, trying to uncover the real estate of real estate here in the GTA and Southwestern Ontario.